No way he just said this, as a former NHL player and analyst has called out one New York Rangers defenseman in particular for his poor play to start the season. And we also have some shocking comments from coach Peter Laviolette and some interesting lineup decisions going into tonight's game against the NHL's best Winnipeg Jets. We're going to break it all down on this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 70% of you who watch our videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to do yourself a favor, it's free. Hit that subscribe button and you get to stay up to date with everything New York Rangers. And that's right, former NHL player PK Subban had some interesting things to say about K'Andre Miller. He did call him out on the broadcast, and this is what he had to say on Twitter. I still believe K'Andre Miller can be a top defenseman and one of the best complete players in the league if he commits to a more demanding brand of hockey. He's got the tools. Now he's got to put them together. Will he? Thoughts? And I tend to agree with PK Subban, and I've been on record the last couple of videos saying, I think that K'Andre Miller can figure it out. But there was some high praise from PK Subban towards K'Andre Miller as well. So let's listen into what PK Subban had to say specifically.
K'Andre Miller's got all the tools. He's got more tools than Adam Fox. He should be their best defenseman right now, and he's got to play that way consistently every night. It's not good enough for him to just be okay. He's got to be a top player for them every night, and he's better than that, and he can be better than that. And Mess, we spoke about it. Nick Lidstrom, you look at some of the top defensemen in the game, this is what makes hockey tough and being a pro athlete tough. Yeah, the consistency, it's got to be there.
Yeah, I think
And I tend to agree with PK Subban on some of those points specifically. I think he can be probably the best defender on the New York Rangers. I think he's got all the tools. He can do it. He has the size, all these things, right? All these intangibles that we talk about, that he can do it. And I thought that was some high praise because, he himself compared him to Nicklas Lidstrom and also Mark Messier. We're comparing this player to Nicklas Lidstrom in the way of how they defend. But obviously, K'Andre Miller has not been able to execute on that. But they do have similar styles. But it's just the consistency. There is no consistency from K'Andre Miller so far, at least this season. And I maybe over the course of his career, you've seen flashes of brilliance where you're like, this guy can be dominant in this league. And obviously, PK Subban said that he can be better than Adam Fox. I don't know about being better than Adam Fox, at least offensively. Adam Fox is a great player in his own right. And you know what? That pairing I don't think was working because they do have similar tendencies at times. And obviously, Adam Fox is always thinking offense. He wants to push forward. And obviously, you can get caught in the defensive zone that way. But I thought this was very high praise from a former player, and he thinks that this player can figure it out, and I do too, but it is not looking great right now for K'Andre Miller. He has been struggling, and there's been a couple times on the impact charts, we break them down on the channel here even, that he's been the best player, or the worst player, specifically on most nights, right? Or near the bottom of the Rangers players. He has not had too much of an impact all over the ice so far this season. I think the Rangers need that from him, right? You're playing high in the lineup and you're making a lot of money. You're, projected to make a lot more money because they need to re-sign this player as well. And he's not doing himself any favors right now. But I do think he can figure it out because we have seen those flashes of brilliance sometimes. And we just need more consistency from this player. I think that's what it boils down to, right? Like the good play, just have more of that. Have it be more consistent, right? Put your best foot forward. The attention to detail. There's a lot of board battles in that clip even that he's losing that he shouldn't lose, especially because of his size. So there's a lot of things, the physical play as well, that he's just got to take it to another level, I think, at this point. And Braden Schneider had some interesting things to say about the defense in general and how the team is playing, because the team has been playing good. Like, they've been putting together some pretty good wins. But at the same time, their style of play right now is not sustainable. And he went on to say, our record is great. You can't take that away from us. We've done a good job of finding ways to get wins. But at the same time, there's always things that you want to do to sharpen up. And I tend to agree with that obviously there's always ways that you can get better, especially a team like this where, sometimes everything falters and it just looks horrible at times. But I don't know if the Rangers have been finding ways to win. All the games that they've won have been because of either their goaltending or maybe the power play, right? And the penalty kill has been great this year too. I broke that down in a previous video where it's number one right now. Actually, coming into tonight's game, this is a very interesting storyline. You have the number one power play versus the number one penalty kill. So I wonder if that bodes well for the New York Rangers, but the Winnipeg Jets have been very hot. So the Rangers have to bring their A game tonight. But one other quote from Peter Laviolette I thought was interesting as well is we could play our best game of the year Tuesday against the Jets. And there's still going to be things that we can do better, that we can teach. And so we go through that process every day. There are always things to touch up on. Some days there's more. We'll continue to work at it. When you play your best game of the year, you're going to pull out 15 things you did great, but there are 5 things you need to do better. We're just trying to keep that number down. And I think he's addressing, I think, one of the main issues with the Rangers here. So that's good to see that at least the coach can see it as well, where it's like, hey, we're winning, but there are like 5 or 6 things that are going wrong in these games that will catch up to us and are not going to bode well for us over the long term. It's not sustainable. So obviously, I talked about the goaltending, how that's, basically won them games so far this year. And I'm glad that he's at least addressing, not the specific issues, which he has in the past, and we've broken those down as well. But he can see that their style of play at times is not consistent, and they have to continue to get better. They're not a perfect team by any means, but I think that they can be close to that. I think if they bring up the physicality and some players start playing more consistent, they can be a better team. But there's way too much inconsistencies in their game right now. They can be a lot better. I believe they can be a lot better. And now to get into some lineup decisions heading into tonight's game against the Winnipeg Jets, the NHL's best Winnipeg Jets, who are 14-1-0 on the season. The forward lines are unchanged. There are no changes, which I think is an interesting thing in itself, right? Like Peter Laviolette has not made any changes after a couple poor performances against Buffalo. Obviously, the other night, fans were pretty down, even though, they won 4-0. A lot of it was on Jonathan Quick's shoulders. So he's giving these lines another shot to go at it. But except for Cooley and Kreider, I should say, he did switch those 2 players because I remember Cooley was on the second line for a brief stint there. But Kreider's back up on the second line there. So it's going to be interesting to see what these lines can do. I thought Trocheck and Smith have looked pretty decent together, and I think Zibanejad up on the first line is just something to get him going, and maybe they'll shuffle the lines back. I don't think you can shuffle the lines back to where they were right away. I did say it in my last video that maybe you should experiment with that, but none of the players that he shuffled these lines around for have gotten going, right? All the players who were going are continuing to go, and guys like Zibanejad haven't necessarily found it yet. So I'm not sure if you can switch them back. I wouldn't touch the D pairings. I will say that. I think that they have to figure it out the way it is, the players that is, and they have to bring a more consistent style of hockey to the table right now. But yes, the Rangers play the Winnipeg Jets tonight, and I thought this was a really good point from Vince in this article, which is a great read as well. And you could basically split the Rangers season so far in half, right? The first half of the season where everyone was feeling good, where it was 5-0-1, and they had the best, attack in the NHL. Their goals per game were up at the tops of the league. 5-on-5 was fantastic, all of that stuff. And now their special teams are still really good. I'll give them that. But the 5-on-5 game has taken a step back. They're allowing far too many shots, way too many shots. And I would chalk that up to team defense, not just the defensive core, but the team defense and the buy-in. So they got to clean that up. And if they're able to do that, there's potential for them to beat the Winnipeg Jets tonight, which I think would be very, very interesting. Only second team to do that in the NHL so far this year, but it's going to be a big matchup. And we'll touch on one last quote from Braden Schneider before we wrap it up here. We have a belief that we're not out of games ever. We have guys that when we get chances, we can bear down on them. And we have 2 guys between the pipes that are amazing goalies. We always feel like whether we have a bad first period or getting outplayed in the locker room, we can turn things around pretty quickly and bury a few quick. Now, I don't know if I necessarily agree with all of that, because there have been games recently, like against the Buffalo Sabres, where you were out of it very early and didn't really come back, and there was none of that pushback. But I do agree on the goaltender part that I do believe the Rangers, the team themselves in the locker room, know that if they are faltering on any given night, they do have the potential to win a game because of their goaltending, no matter who it is. But obviously, Shesterkin has been brilliant so far this year. So let me know what you think in the comments about PK Subban's comments on the defense on Keandre Miller. Let me know what you think about the very slight lineup change from Peter Laviolette and the goaltending as well. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.